who is making this decision with you and trying to have them involved as much as possible on calls with you, on calls with me. There's nothing to be afraid about to talk to a funding consultant and just say, hey, here's what I've got. What do you think I'd reasonably be able to afford? And that's important when it comes to any franchise or business opportunity. We can get back to the candidate and say, all right, here's the range of what we most likely think that you'll be able to get an SBA loan, for example, for. And that helps them sort of in their path of looking at different franchise opportunities.
Welcome to the Franchise Freedom Podcast, where you can escape the corporate trap through franchise ownership. Here's your host, Giuseppe Grammatico, the Franchise Guide.
Welcome to the Franchise Freedom Podcast. I'm your host, Giuseppe Grammatico, your franchise guide, the show where we help corporate executives experience time and financial freedom via franchising. Thanks for joining us. We took your comments seriously. You guys were sick of hearing from me, so we're bringing on guests, and that's our goal for 2024. So we have an awesome guest today, someone that I know personally. We've been working together for a while now. We have Jen Wherrell from Benetrends. Jen, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, excited. Everyone was sick of hearing from me, so I'm like, you know what? We're gonna have Jen on from funding, because not only can she explain funding better, she won't be as boring as me. So we appreciate it. So tell us, before we dive into some questions that people have sent our way, give us a little background. Who's Jen, and tell us a little bit about Benetrends.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I'm so happy to be here today. As Giuseppe mentioned, I am with Benetrends Financials Funding, and I've been in franchising for, 14 years, which is funny because I'm only 15 years old, as I like to say.
Impressive.
My whole life. But yeah, I've been a franchisor. I've consulted for a little bit, and funding space has been absolutely the most fun. So I'm a business owner and a consultant for Benetrends. So I really, really love working with people to really, get out of the JOB, as I like to say, and really start creating their own future through franchising or business ownership.
Awesome. Yeah, it's funding is an interesting topic, because I think a lot of people have these assumptions. Sure. They hear investments or what they think a franchise investment is, or what options. So, when someone has a question about funding, I'll just speak for a few minutes and just say, talk to Jen. Jen can kind of walk you through. So, I'm going to dive into the FAQs, because I put a few feelers out from people. What are your questions on funding? And there are a lot, and I did a few polls. So, number one question I get is, when should you look into funding if you're exploring a franchise?
That's a really great question. And I think sometimes people may look into it a little bit too late. One of the wonderful things about Benetrends and what we do is we offer complimentary pre-qualification services. So essentially why that's important is because we can get back to the candidate and say, all right, here's the range of what we most likely think that you'll be able to get an SBA loan, for example, for. And that helps them sort of in their path of looking at different franchise opportunities. It's just like a pre-qualification for a mortgage. My husband and I were looking for a home, and, we were like, all right, let's figure out nothing. You don't want to take your wife to a $5 million home and you can only afford a $1 million one, right? Kind of gets you upset. So it's very similar in the funding space with franchising. There's nothing to be afraid about to talk to a funding consultant and just say, hey, here's what I've got. What do you think I'd reasonably be able to afford? And that's important when it comes to any franchise or business opportunity.
Bingo. And I say the same thing. So I feel much better. It's, kind of just disclose and write down what you have. Put it all down, put the retirement, put the value of the home, the equity you have in the home, put it all out there, so there could be a full analysis. So I agree there. And that helps with the search, because if the max loan is $500,000, we're not going to look at a $2 million investment. So, which I think I want to kind of reiterate. So the question comes, and I'm going to answer part of this, and then I'm going to have you elaborate. So the next question is, what is the best funding option? What I say, and I want, and if you have a different opinion, or if you can elaborate, this would be great. Sure. What I always say is, just like what's the best franchise, it depends. Right. You may have, a retirement plan, a traditional IRA, a 401k from a previous company that you work for that you can use. But the idea of using retirement assets is just something ingrained in you to never use, and you may want to explore other options. So I will say it's good to get all options and then go with the option you're most comfortable with. That's what I tell everyone, because everyone's going to have different opinions. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, absolutely agree 100%.
Okay.
When it comes to funding, there's so many things, and there's things that Benetrends doesn't offer. And that's really my job, is to not, offer something that Benetrends offers, right? My job is to go through, is a HELOC, some people don't even think about HELOCs. Oftentimes people will think of the loan as in the name, SBA, small business loan, and then automatically like, that's what I want. But if a HELOC is better, then we're going to go that route, because sometimes the HELOC has better rates and better terms than an SBA loan, depending on the size of business that you're looking at. So there's, securities backed line of credit. There are unsecured loan opportunities. The Rob's 401k rollover, as you mentioned, I always tell people, most people have never heard of it. They are like, is it legal? And it is, we've been doing it for 43 years, but, at the end of the day, you're investing already into corporations with your retirement plan. And the same is true if you were to invest in your own business. So why not, invest in yourself? So lots of different options.
So if I hear you correctly, it sounds like you do a full analysis, a true full analysis to say, okay, these are your 6 options. 3 we offer here at Benetrends, 3 are outside. It could be a combination of all 6 or combination of a few of them, but you are able to give advice on a HELOC, right? That they would go directly to their bank. Is that?
And even more so than advice, Giuseppe, I don't leave them hanging. I always tell people, these are your next steps to follow through with those options that may not be with Benetrends, and always feeling free to call me back for information and guidance on those opportunities that they may look into. We're not just here for us, but we're really truly client facing. We're about the candidate and for the long haul.
Right. So candidate comes and says, all right, I really want to go the SBA route, but we're not there. They have not been pre-approved for whatever reason. It could be credit score, it could be just lack of liquidity or income. Is there a plan that's put into place? Will you actually go back and say, well, these are the things that are needed, or these are the reasons you didn't qualify?
Absolutely. There can be a lot of things. You touched on a couple of them. Low liquidity. We walk them through the steps of maybe getting an investor or a co-founder, or not a co-founder, getting in an investor or a co-borrower, someone that would co-sign on the loan. On top of that, when it comes to credit scores in particular, there are certain, I always like to see their credit report, because there are some things that are an easy fix. We do help them out with helping out with their credit if there's an issue there. There are some things that are easily fixed, and there are some things that are a long-term goal. But I think that funding and finance is scary for people, right? They don't want everybody to know their business. They're worried that, oh man, maybe I don't have perfect credit, and I just always like to make them feel good regardless of where they sit, because you never know what can happen in a 3 to 6 month period. And I just want to make sure that they have steps to either improve their credit or, find a way to have some of that self-funding coming from another source to help them get qualified. So I just think it's fair to give everybody the same chance and feel comfortable to reach out to us at any time for that guidance.
That's awesome. So it's a one-stop shop. I was not aware, and we've been working together for a while, that you actually assist with some quick fixes on the credit, because sometimes it's so close and you're off by a few points. So that is interesting. And I learned something today. So that's great.
We even have secrets that don't involve getting someone to repair your credit. So we've got little tips and tricks too.
Right. And sometimes, I mean, there was someone years ago, I remember saying they were late making payments because they were always paid the day of, and it was kind of registering the day after, like, do it, just move it back a day and pay it a day earlier, and that'll fix a lot of these issues. So that's great. That's good to know. So I guess let's talk realistic kind of expectations. Maybe we could do just an example. So there is the retirement rollover, and that's utilizing retirement assets. There are a lot of accountants that are not aware; they're not comfortable with it. So it's my understanding that Benetrends would assist with the conversation with a CPA, as well as the family looking to invest in the business, just to kind of clarify, because obviously I get the same thing. Is that legal? Of course it's legal. Why would we recommend it? So Benetrends will offer that service in order to make the CPA a little bit more comfortable.
Absolutely. I have several conversations with CPAs. By the end of the call, they're just on board as we are and the candidate is. And I feel like that makes, people feel comfortable that we're willing to take their trusted advisor into a conversation with us. And oftentimes people don't even have CPAs. So we actually have CPAs all over the country that are familiar with ROBs and with all of the things that are involved with that have been around for several decades that can assist in that area. But absolutely, we never shy away from having conversations with those that people trust that are in their day-to-day lives, especially
Awesome.
CPAs.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, didn't Benetrends create the retirement rollover plan?
Yeah, so essentially the founder of our company, Lynn Fisher, is still an ERISA attorney, and he was looking to do exactly what all of our candidates are looking to do, which is to be awarded a franchise. And he was looking to find the most economical and efficient way possible to fund his business. He discovered that large corporations were being funded by ROBs, which all of us are probably aware. I mean, if you have a retirement plan, you're investing in businesses and oftentimes the company that you work for. And when he realized that he could fund his franchise opportunity that way, and no one else had realized it, he immediately, as the smart guy that he is, created Benetrends around providing that service. And then that's one of the benefits, I think, with Benetrends is, we're not just a funding company that helps out with all of these other arenas, but we are a full-scale retirement planning company. So we don't outsource any of the work. Everything's in-house. The team is a full retirement planning company team as well.
That's awesome. That's good to know. And for those that are skeptical, learn about it, figure out and see. And, my whole thing is, these conversations are great because you can figure out what qualifies, right? What money you can use. There's differences between Roth and traditional IRAs, and if you're currently with the employer, previous employer. So it's good to have these conversations. I wanted to bring up, because this is something where I've had conversations with people, and I'm sure you've had the same, where they're like, I'm really interested in owning a franchise, but I just don't have the money. Mm-hmm. And I'll just say, don't have the money. What do you mean by that? And they say, well, I don't have millions of dollars in savings or these amounts, because they have this kind of thought where it's fast food. It's all brick and mortar, which there's plenty of, but there's also lots of home-based service options. So what can someone expect at a much lower investment? We'll use an example of a home service franchise. We'll just make up a painting franchise that has an investment of $200,000. What can someone who qualifies for an SBA, roughly, maybe a range, have to actually kind of pay out of pocket and then get funding for the rest?
Sure, that's a great question. So essentially, if you're looking at the SBA route, they're going to require what's called a 20% equity injection. And that's an injection into your business, right? So that can be franchising fees. I tell them any dollar that they spend really to go towards even investigating the franchise. Most people don't know that. So if you're having an attorney look at documents, if you're flying to a discovery day, your flight, your food, your Uber, all of that, any money you spend can go towards that equity injection. So on $200,000, we're looking at a $40,000 equity injection. So that's an important component that's going to come directly out to the franchisor or whatever that might be. And then typically we're going to look for that same amount in post-closing liquidity, or what's known as global debt service. And what that means is that's not anything they have to spend. For example, they may have $100,000 in their current employer's retirement account. Now we know, as you mentioned, that's not something we can use for the rollover. However, as long as they have a minimum of 50% that would equate to that post-closing, then they'll account for that, because they know, as most people may not or may be aware of, that you could do a participant loan for up to $50,000 or half of what you have there. So that could be used as that as well. But again, it's nothing that you have to use. It's just they don't want you using every dollar you have to fund this opportunity. So as long as you have some of that left over, and income, things like that, that's what they're going to be looking for. So it's pretty straightforward throughout the board.
Awesome. Here's one. It came up, and I know the answer to this, but I want to let the audience listen to your response here, because this is a question most people don't ask. Can I be overqualified for an SBA loan? That came up recently.
Sometimes you can, I've seen that, but very rarely. I have seen that, not so much now because of the interest rates and SBA loans. So, but it's a very rare instance where that would occur.
Gotcha. And I think, I don't know what the instance was, but I don't know if it was, they had too much. It was a 200,000 investment. They had 500 in cash. I think was it's like, well, why do you need the loan if you have the funds available, the liquid funds available? So I always tell people that's why these conversations are great, because that way you can kind of go through the avenues and decide, another, if it's going to be multiple strategies, right? A retirement rollover, the ROBs or an SBA. But part of the process too is, if I'm not mistaken, it has to be done in a certain order. So if you do want to utilize a couple strategies, and maybe you can talk a little bit about that, things should be done in a certain order, correct?
That is correct. Okay. And to your point, that's one of the wonderful things about using a company like Benetrends is we don't charge for the pre-qualification, and we don't do a hard pull on your credit. Where oftentimes, and I've come across this quite a few times over the last 6 months, where we have really qualified candidates that just decided to go to their local bank, because even myself, I'm sure I'm a business owner, so I've got a great relationship with my banker. And if I'm going to get a loan, a first idea before even knowing about a Benetrends would be, let me talk to my local banker, right? Which is not a problem, but the problem lies in a couple of things. One is they are going to charge you for that pre-qual. They are going to do a hard pull on your credit. They may approve you, but they may not approve the franchise opportunity. Not because there's anything wrong with the franchise opportunity. It's just most people may not be aware that banks have different appetites for different types of businesses, right? And so if they're not familiar with the franchising space, or they're not familiar with food, for example, they may not be as comfortable lending. So I know that probably wasn't the question you were asking, but it was something that—
No, that was super. No, that was it. That was super helpful, because people don't realize that. It makes a big difference going to a company like Benetrends, because you have to have the appetite. They have to understand the franchise space, how things work. A lot of franchises run the same, and the language in the FDD and things like that. So
I was just going to say, we work with a lot of franchisors. I personally work with a lot of franchisors. And so anytime a new franchisor reaches out to me, immediately I take their disclosure documents to finance. We review them, we get back to the franchisor, and then we start vetting it with banks. So the banks that we work with, over 80 banks across the country, they know that we've underwritten these brands prior to even introducing people. So you just don't run into that with a Benetrends.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's very interesting. See, that's another thing I learned today. So what else, I always tell people, best thing to do is, when I'm working with someone, I always say, I'm going to make an introduction to Jen at Benetrends. She's going to do a full analysis. Everything is going to be covered there. What I do recommend, and I want to see if you have any other recommendations or suggestions, is get your stuff together. Get your financials, get your brokerage account statements, get the balance on your mortgage, put it all there. Don't assume it's not included. It's better to over prepare and bring that info, but just get organized, so at least you know where all that information and those numbers are. Anything else that people should prepare for financially or get ready before that meeting?
You know what? That's really great points. I think the only other thing that is important to note is, who are you making the decisions with? If you are going to be moving forward with a business opportunity, a franchise, and you're going to have that funding call, yes, 1,000%, having all of that information in front of you, even if it's just for the first conversation with me, a best estimate of all of those items. Of course, we're going to have you uploading things into a secure file invite. But on the other side of it is who is making this decision with you, and trying to have them involved as much as possible on calls with you, on calls with me. I'm always happy to do a secondary call, a third call, whatever it might take with the other spouse or friend or family member that's involved. But really taking this as serious as you would buying a home, because you really need to have all the parties involved, and certainly those that are going to be making that decision. So that would be the other thing besides, yes, being prepared with your financials, since we don't do a hard pull on your credit, having 3 credit reporting agency reports to upload, things like that.
Music to my ears. We're saying the same stuff, and I like that. So, but yes, that is very important, and I talk about that quite a bit. Everyone's got to be on board. This is a business, whether it's funding the investment. There's going to be there's the financial piece, there's the emotional piece, there's the time. There's so many different pieces to it. So include everyone. Everyone needs to be comfortable and aware of the decisions, the investments, and things like that. So awesome advice. And I get a lot of calls, and the spouse is on, or it's just one person's on, and there really should be multiple people on those calls. So some really good advice. Well, I really appreciate this. This was super helpful. Maybe on a future episode, my thoughts were maybe to dive in a little bit deeper on a specific strategy or what you're seeing. Common mistakes or common services or products that people are asked for or moving forward with. So I would love to continue this conversation. If anyone would like to reach you, what's the best way to reach you?
Sure. My email address is jwerrell@benetrends.com. Probably the easiest way to do that. Just email me and I'll get you started on the journey.
Awesome. We'll put all that in the show notes, and any questions you have on funding for a future episode, please let us know, guys. Put that in the comments. Send us an email. We read them all, and looking forward to your comments, likes, follows, and we really appreciate all your feedback. Jen, thanks again for being on the show. This was awesome, and we'll definitely talk soon.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a great rest of your day.
You too.
Thanks for tuning in. If you want to learn how to make the transition from corporate to owning your franchise, join Giuseppe on the next episode. You can also follow on all social media platforms and achieve financial and time freedom today.